So I thought, I want to resurrect my mentorship practice, and I want to work with high performing women who are either leaders in their businesses or leaders in the corporate world who are going through significant life transition, or who want to reinvent themselves and create a whole new life for themselves.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where we're dedicated to helping you live your best audacious life ever. It's always a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate all our listeners and viewers who've taken the time to tune in and check out the podcast. While I'm not a huge, big-time chess player, I can tell you that life can be like a challenging game of chess. It requires strategic moves, courage, and the willingness to take risks to achieve that victory that we're after. Just like in the game of chess, living an audacious life involves making those same type of bold decisions, stepping out of your comfort zone, embracing the unknown with courage and determination. In today's episode, we have the privilege of sitting down with Sophie Deslauriers. She's a transformational mentor who helps high-achieving women reinvent themselves and create their dream lives. Sophie's journey of overcoming adversity, including divorce, cancer diagnosis, and pregnancy challenges, exemplifies the audacious spirit of resilience and courage that we aim to inspire our listeners. So, with that being said, enjoy the conversation with Sophie. Hey, Sophie, thank you for joining me today here on the Audacious Living Podcast. It's a pleasure, and thank you for making the time like this.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, no, it's great. I take such pleasure in engaging in conversations such as this, where, really it's about, encouraging people to live, their best audacious lives ever, essentially. And I think that that pathway that each of us take to get there is unique. It's to our own, but still it's one that I feel we all should take. And one of the things that is very clear, and it shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone, that life is full of adversities, and there's challenges, and there's things that come along our way. And just think sometimes we think we've got it all figured out, something else happens, and we've got to pivot and change and do all sorts of different things. But I think those are sort of the processes of life. And I truly feel that I really believe that when we come up against adversity, that we're going in the right direction, because we're getting that resistance. It's easy to say after the fact, but in the moment, it's tough, right? And I get that too, so I honor that. So maybe as a starting point, since I've kind of given a little preface about adversity, and maybe you can give a little insight into our listeners about your journey and the work that you do today.
Sure. So my journey started off in humble beginnings. My parents divorced when I was 2, so I was raised by a single mom, a younger brother. I always wanted to be a lawyer when I was young. My parents were divorced. I wanted to be a divorce lawyer. I thought, I'm going to be this woman who helps other women, get through that whole process. I'm 47 now. So maybe when I was like 7, 8, or 9, so 40 years ago,
right.
That wasn't necessarily a very popular profession for women. And then, I watched this movie called Pretty Woman, and I saw Richard Gere, and I saw him buy businesses and take them apart. And there was a part of me that just thought that was exciting, and I wanted to do that. And then when I got to university, I wanted to green big businesses. I did environmental studies in university, and I thought, I'm going to be, the type of lawyer that goes and helps businesses be more green and have an environmental impact. And then I realized how much university costs, and I realized how much law school costs and how much more time that was. And so that quickly didn't look so attractive to me anymore. Yeah. And I started selling. And I happened to be a natural born salesperson. I was a very good listener. I asked a lot of questions. I'm naturally curious. But what I could do really well is ask for the sale. And what I recognized many years later is that the reason salespeople don't necessarily do well is because people are afraid to go for the close. That was not my issue. I had thought, if I've done already all this work and all these questions, I've presented you a solution, I want to know if you want to buy or not. That was just the thing. And so that was like one of my most exciting parts of the sales process, was actually going in and asking for the sale. So
right.
I discovered that I had this great skill. I ended up taking coaching courses, and then I ended up marrying sales and coaching together. So I went and traveled to North America and worked with the sales division of very large organizations like Bell, BMO,
Okay.
TD,
Okay.
CIBC, like that. And I worked with the sales leaders and I trained them how to be more coach-like in their interaction so that they could encourage and develop their teams and get their teams to align to the strategic vision. And I worked with
Mhm.
the actual sales team and I helped them with questioning and listening, presenting, negotiation skills, and the actual sales process. So I did that for quite a while.
Well,
A
and
great
it sounds
career.
like you're right in your lane at this point, right?
I was right in my lane at that point, you know, it was like a nice fit for me. I was able to do a little
Yeah.
coaching. The difference was is my passion really is human performance and working in large organizations like that, although it was a kind of a sexy job. There was like,
Right.
you know, fancy dinners, nice restaurants, put on a suit, like that kind of ordeal, get flown places. Um, the organizations, to be honest with you, are more interested in ROI than they were in human potential. And although human potential, human performance brings ROI, they didn't want to really be in the belly of the development of people. They just wanted their results.
Mhm.
I was often one of maybe two women in the room. I was about 10 years junior to the executive men in the room. And so there was just a bit of an energetic rub for me.
Okay.
You know, I was like, felt like I was running with Olympians and not really an Olympian, like men, A type personality men that have a very specifically driven energy, which is
Okay.
great. I
Okay.
worked a lot with it. It just, I found it to be depleting. And so I had a contract that ended around 37 and I ended up not going back into that world
Okay.
because I did just find it to be a little bit too masculine energy. I mean, we all have masculine energy, but I just found it to be too A type like personality. So I started to think about what I was going to do next. And in that time frame, I started to look at my personal life and I
Mhm.
was married about 18 years. My ex-husband and I decided to consciously uncouple.
Okay.
After 18 years, during that time frame, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was about 42 years old at this point in time, and I had repartnered. And I had one role in life that I hadn't played yet. That was a suppressed desire that I really wanted to have the opportunity to experience, and that was to be a mother.
Okay.
The oncologist told me that getting pregnant was a contraindication to the cancer, was a risk for the recurrence of cancer diet. I had an estrogen dominant cancer, which meant getting pregnant, my estrogen levels are going to naturally rise. And so we had to have some very serious conversations about what it would be like to be a pregnant woman who also perhaps potentially had cancer.
Right.
And they advised me against it. I refused treatments to get pregnant. And my partner and I were blessed with a baby boy 8 months after my lumpectomy. And then the pandemic hit the month I
Right.
found out I was pregnant. I conceived the last week of February. Pandemic hit here in Toronto, March 17th. I only know that because then I, did my pregnancy test on March 24th because that was my cycle. And like I have it very distinctly etched in my
Yes.
memory.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a huge memory for you.
And the world was ending.
Yes.
I was creating. So we went through the pandemic, and the silver lining of it all, like the joy of it all, is that my partner was able to take a year off of work because I'm an entrepreneur. I wasn't working at the time. He got to have a full year of paternity leave. We were in the pandemic. There was nothing for us to do other than hang out with our newborn baby. And so for the three of us, we got to create like this wonderful little nest for us, and so good for the
Beautiful.
baby, so good for the child. Yeah, it
Beautiful.
was amazing. Baby turns 18 months. I'm starting to feel like it's time for me to have a little bit of a break. Baby goes to daycare. I give myself the full summer. And then I start to think, okay, I have extra time now. What
Mhm.
am I going to do? And I really just started to think about how I wanted to re-enter the workforce. So, I'm 47 now. This would have been January of this year. So I would have just been 46, turning 47. My birthday's in May. And there's a lot of stereotypes out there that a woman my age might potentially have a challenging time getting back into the workforce, given the fact that I've been an entrepreneur for 20
Right.
years. Is
Right. Right.
that's also a challenge. Like, how do I go back to a 9 to 5? So I thought, right, like, I
Sure.
hadn't had a boss in a long time. So I
Right.
thought, I want to resurrect my mentorship practice, and I want to work with high performing women who are either leaders in their businesses or leaders in the corporate world who are going through significant life transition, or who want to reinvent themselves and create a whole new life for themselves. And so I really, refer to myself as a love and money coach because I want women to have their love lives and their romantic relationships really sorted, because I feel like a lot of women trade business. That's a
Right.
trade-off that a lot of us women have to do, right?
I think
There's
they can't
competing
have
needs.
both, you mean? Like they can't
Well,
have
yeah, it's
both.
challenging. Yeah, it's a bit challenging. The needs of the business compete with the needs of the relationship, and like, how do you make that work? And there's intricacies about it. So I have re-emerged as that type of mentor now, and that's the type of work I do. I help women repair the relationship they have with themselves, heal from past heartbreak, transform the relationship that they're in, or attract their soulmate love, develop the business skills so that their business starts to thrive more, and completely just reinvent every single area of their life so that they get the more that they want out of life.
You know, Sophie, I'm always amazed. I'm blessed to hear so many people's stories and the challenges that they go through, and it's always I'm always appreciate and enjoy as they recount their story, and they say it so matter of factly. Oh, I did this, and I went through this challenge, and I overcame this, and I
Uh,
overcame that, and some pretty big things, right? Big things that
yeah.
would rock a lot of people's worlds, and they breeze over it so matter of factly, like it wasn't a big deal. And that's sort of the impression I got as you were talking, because
Mm.
you certainly went through some stuff, and it was like, yeah, I did this, and then I did this, and I did this. But in the moment, I'm sure it wasn't that easy, was it?
Yeah, no, it was some of the biggest challenges I ever had in my life. The last 5 years of my life have honestly been some of the most challenging years in my 47 years. And I'm not in the emotional experience of it right now, so I can just like lay out the facts for
Sure,
you. If I'm sure if
sure.
you were to probe, we might get me there. It's not that hard to get me there. But yeah, I mean, divorce after 18 years for any human being, regardless if it's a choice on both parties or not, that's a big heartbreak and a grief. I mean, I'd like to say it like I have 3+1 heartbreaks. I did it all at once. I went through the divorce, was diagnosed with cancer. That's another massive heartbreak. I mean, and the fear of going
Oh,
from a
that in itself comes with so much other emotions and unknowns, the uncertainties, the doubts. It's one thing it's one thing to go through a divorce. The relationship's ending, and you're grieving from that. You're going to get around. You know what the outcome is going to be. You've got to move forward, right? Life doesn't end.
right,
You
right,
get a terminal illness potentially, or an illness of a serious illness,
yeah.
right? You're going, you don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, I just don't think people really take into account the amount of fear that comes into the human body when you hear that word, because like on the food chain, there's only two things that really get us, right? Is war and disease as
Right.
human beings, right? Like if you think about it, right? Someone else with and so I went through the divorce, I went through cancer, I had to walk away from a very thriving business that my ex-husband and I had built, because that's just the way it went in the divorce. So there's like one, two, three, and then the pandemic was a heartbreak for everybody. And so I experienced massive heartbreak.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
massive for me, and there wasn't somebody out there to support me and help me navigate that process. I had to put a team together
Right.
because of my coaching background. I was okay to do that. And so when I was re-emerging, it's like, I have life nuanced in a completely different way. And there have been time after time after time in the last 5 years that I've had to look at crisis it's like standing in the eye of the storm, and I have to look at this crisis, and I had to be so strong mentally to pick out, okay, so where's the light, and how do I align myself to
Yes.
that and only that, and then just let the debris fall, and there's like a superpower in that I've been trained and
Mm.
developed in the last 5 years, that in and of itself is like the personal power and strength that I have now, having gone through that with that mindset, I feel is something for me to contribute. And now looking back, it's almost like that was part of my process and my purpose, so that others can see there is triumph in crisis. You really
Yeah.
can. And I
Yeah.
have a beautiful baby boy, less than a 5% chance of getting pregnant. I had a miracle pregnancy at the age of 44, which is like, it's just, that just doesn't happen. We conceived naturally. That just, again, doesn't happen. And I'm 4.5 years cancer free without doing treatment, which means in the next 6 months, I will be considered cancer free outside of my oncologist's care. And now I'm, bringing back my mentorship practice. And during that time, I built a real estate portfolio. So, I mean, like life goes on. Like
Right.
it really
Wow.
does.
You're a walking anomaly, Sophie, which is a wonderful thing, right? Because that serves as a beacon to so many others. I will tell you, and I'm sure you would agree, but there's when you're going through something difficult or challenging, um, it's so easy to think that no one else on the planet
Yeah.
has any idea what it feels like, what you're going through, what the experience is, or how to get through it. So then
Yeah.
when you see someone that comes and go, hey, look, here's what I've done, right? That just changed the entire landscape for you. So I'm really glad that not only are you able to, well, first of all, that you overcame and you show the resilience to get to where you need to get to. So bravo, bravo, bravo for sure.
Thank you.
But then, as opposed to leaving that with you, you're like, okay, let me see how I can help others, because
Yeah.
now you're by sharing. Because now when you're empowering, like that's huge. That really you're the impact that you're having is just at a whole other level at that point.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate you saying that. It's wonderful to hear. Yeah, because it's really I'm coming from a place of service now, you
Yep,
know.
yep. So let's talk about how you got through some of these challenges. You talked earlier about assembling a team around you, right, and having that kind of support. But the team wasn't always there, right? Like there's times where the team wasn't, or maybe even before the team got in place, you still had challenges to go through. What'd you do?
Well, I have been doing personal development since I was about 23 years old. So now 47. So like I don't know what's that 47 minus 23, something like 20 some odd years, 24 years, something like that. So I have a strong foundation for my mindset. I have a very strong and my mindset has been very specifically trained to take radical responsibility for my life. So I am somebody who can get to the source of it and take responsibility of it. I tend to take too much responsibility, which is another thing, but I can take responsibility for it. And then I'm also future focused. So I know how to process my emotions, let stuff go, look at the future, and create a narrative for myself that's empowering. Like, for example, divorce could look like failure for a lot of people, and it did for me
Sure.
for a long time, until I realized it's like, can we just talk about that for a second, please? Like, how many people have been married for 18 years first?
Right.
And okay, right. So that in of itself is a success.
Yep.
And two, why is it a failure? How come it's not we just grew apart and wanted different things and it's no longer a fit and there's no alignment there? And we have allowed each other the opportunity to go get our dreams fulfilled that we couldn't do
Yep.
together. Like why is it not that?
Well, and so I mean, I heard you clearly say that it was a mutual. You mutually decided to move forward. There wasn't, I'm sure there was some grief and maybe some tears and whatnot, but I mean,
Yes.
it could have gotten a whole lot worse. We've seen tons and tons of stories out there of just all terrible things happening through the divorce process. That wasn't your experience. In fact, I hear it was almost as positive as it positive could be.
But I think that's a mindset thing.
Talk about that.
Well, okay. So, I mean, there were reasons for me not to be so amicable, but how does that support the process? Like, you have a choice. I had a choice. I could either be committed to making this process peaceful, easy, neutral, short, or I could have thrown some fire out there. I was wounded. I could have spit out a little bit of fire, but I know that that doesn't support the process. And I wanted the process to get sorted quickly. Um, and so I showed up that way, and I maneuvered myself and my mindset in a way that accommodated that. And I think that there's opportunity for other people to do that also. But we get stuck in our interpretation, our negative wounds of, negative emotions around like jealousy, competition, threats, whatever that is, our wounding of being abandoned and rejected. Like when you're coming from your wounded child, oh, yeah, it's not going to go necessarily well. But if you're coming from your inner, the wise inner parent within, and you're parenting yourself through the whole thing, and you're constantly stepping into your leadership, that's a completely different experience. And so I choose to, as often as I possibly can, step into my leadership. Do I show up like a wounded child sometimes? Yes. Do I go back and like lick my tears and like take responsibility for that? Yes. But in a process like that, it's the same with cancer too. I mean, it's just, I don't think there's much room for wounded child to show up. And if the wounded child is showing up, then that's where you get your team. You go to your team, not to the situation at hand, not the divorce. You go to the
Right.
team and you go there and you have them hold you and you release, and so that you can show up again in your higher self. And I really truly fundamentally believe that's how operating through life gets you the best of you, the best of
Yeah.
life, the best experience, so
Yeah.
that was my mindset.
No, I think ideally it does. I believe it truly starts with your mindset, how you see things, how you view things, and how you perceive. And I say see things, but really how you perceive things, because really
Yeah.
what it comes down to. We all come with our own perspective as to what we see a situation to be, but that doesn't mean that's what it is, right? Because we,
Interpretation and perspective is everything.
yeah, yeah. So from your again your perspective and your opinion, what are you seeing as a hindrance for people to have the mindset that allows them to go achieve the things that they want in life?
People get stuck in the past.
Okay.
So if I realize I have a lot of courage. I don't like transitions in life, to be honest with you. I really don't. Transitions are not my favorite thing. I think that's a human being thing. I don't personally, as everyone else, but specifically, I'll just talk about myself. I don't like the unknown necessarily. It's kind of a scary place to be. And yet, it's where the magic is. It's where creation is. It's where results are. It's where the life you want is. And we, as humans, when we're perhaps younger, like when I was in my 20s and I didn't have a lot to lose, it's kind of easy to have courage and go for things. You have nothing to really compare it to. You haven't had any major disappointments in life, any major failures. You don't really, have a sense of what that feels like. So you go for it. And then you get to a point, I don't know, 30s, it was in my 40s, where you have a lot more. And then going for it just is a lot scarier. There's more things to work through. There's more things you could lose. Now you could really be a failure or embarrassed or be judged. Like there's all of that comes into play. And then I feel like we get stuck there. And so we lose the courage. And when you lose the courage, you lose the spark.
Right.
And we stop saying yes to ourselves. We get complacent and comfortable. Because like anybody should be happy with what I have, perhaps, and maybe we feel a little guilty for wanting more, and we stop playing full out to our edge, and we actually just start to retract and contract, in my opinion, and get unhappy.
Mm, that sounds sad.
It's sad for me, yeah, and I did live that way for a while. Before I made some major changes in my life. And it is sad. And so I was saying, I don't love transitions, but I am somebody who will force it because I know it's the only way, to get to the end, to go through the other side. And if you can go through the process with a childlike wonder and a jolliness and a playfulness, and like you're co-creating something with the universe, and you're like manifesting, like if you come at it with that energy, it could be really fun, and the unknown can be really fun. We used to love that as a kid. Like we used to our imagination used to take us to travel wherever, right?
Sure. And there's nothing wrong with that, like to have that childlike
Oh.
energy, right? To maintain that and be that again, that child within. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Not
I
at all.
actually think that's the most powerful energy there is to play from. And I feel like as soon as we say yes to ourselves as a human, as soon as we say yes to what our inner child really wants, like the desire that's being born, the universe automatically creates that's the spark for the universe to reorganize everything to start to deliver for you.
Yes, yes. So you focus on high achieving women, you mentioned, right? And helping them and get to that better place that we're alluding to. I'm assuming there's not just one way of doing that. It really, I guess, I mean, one would be, depending on where you're at individually for sure, but I wonder what that journey that you take them on, what does that look like?
Yeah, I like to call it the reinvention process.
Okay. Okay.
And we start, so there is a bit of a process to it. And we really start with deconditioning, like unlearning, specifically women in my generation. They're all women, but And I feel like the younger generation has started to do a lot more unlearning. But it's like, what are all the societal messages and the stereotypes and the gender roles that we've been told that we need to conform to, that we actually need to unlearn so that we can be fully self-expressed, and so that we can like relieve some of the pressure and anxiety that we have as women, and so that we can, first of all, stop disease and stop being scared, because
Right.
the more pressure we have, the more anxiety we have, the more inflammation the body has, that's just a lead to so many different.
Mm. Yep.
So there's that. So we go through that whole, we talk about the fears and really start to understand where the fears are coming from and the impact that's had, and how you do it is you walk alongside of fear, you just choose your dream. Like, fear doesn't go anywhere. You just either choose fear, you choose your dream, and you take action towards your fear, you take action towards your dream. And too many of us are taking action towards our fear, and that's why we're not getting what we want. And then it's about visualization. It's about visioning. I feel like a lot of people don't have a strong enough vision to pull them. And then it's about alignment, aligning your thoughts, feelings, actions, behaviors that commit to the vision. So many of us have a vision and then we don't commit to it.
Right.
And that's like a disjoint. That's disjointed. And then I do a lot of work in and around emotional regulation, self-sabotage, inner child work. And then we do a lot of work around forgiveness, forgiving yourself, forgiving your parents, forgiving, like, lots of different forgiveness work to create space. And then I work with them and I teach them a collaborative communication model so that they show up as somebody who's co-creating solutions, rather than showing up as somebody who's aggressive, blaming, defensive, like that.
Right.
So yeah, there's quite the process. And because of the work that I've done in the corporate world, I also work with women to help them develop their leadership, their resilience, their emotional intelligence. That's just part of the package. But specifically, how do they lead in a one-on-one, or how do they lead a team so that they can have their team aligned to their strategic vision? What are their sales skills? And I help them all with the sales skills and the negotiation and presentations, because I feel like those are the essential business skills any human should have. I just don't think we're
Mm.
being taught that in school,
Right.
so that we can show up at any table confidently. And for women, it's mostly we don't have the same confidence as men.
Mm.
So
Right.
that's mostly the way the work looks.
Yeah. I appreciate the fact that you start with the sort of reinvention, if you will, and
Yeah.
that's the one of those transition things that you're not a fan of, but you got to go through it anyways, right?
Yeah, and the great thing about it is I reinvented every area of my life,
Mhm.
and I was lucky to do it in the nick of time to have a baby, because that wasn't necessarily a guarantee for me. And yes, women are having babies older, but I was 43 years old. And when you take a look at the lifespan of an egg, I really did have like 100-year-old eggs. I was really a geriatric mother, is how I was referred to. And so,
Mhm.
um, are people just sitting a little too long? And there's time, you're never too old, but we're just sitting a little too long in what we're like just comfortable with. And the reinvention process, it actually, if you just think about the wording of it, it's just so exciting.
Mm.
We get to reinvent, we get to redo everything. We reclaim your power, we get to recreate your life, we get
Sure.
to rebuild your life, we get to redo it. Like, this area is not working, let's just
Push
redo that.
push the reset button, start
That
again, right?
that's
And,
right.
and
You can.
well, and there's so much power in that alone, right? Because
Yes.
you think of all the things that have gone through in your life and the experiences, and people say, well, and people pointing fingers, reminding you about who you are and what you did or what you didn't do or what you didn't achieve or where you ended up, and you don't have to. Okay, let's start again then.
Yeah.
Start all over again, right?
And nothing's lost.
Right. And well, I truly believe you push the button, you actually have the opportunity to be better than you were, because not only
Yes.
are you pushing a button and resetting your life, you now have all this wealth of experiences, which still stays with you. The lessons that you've gone through, the learnings that you've taken, they still stay with you. And you just have an opportunity to bring them with you on this new journey.
Yeah, and I like to say it like it's like stepping into the next version of you. The version of you, it's almost like it's Einstein's quote that I'm just going to rephrase a little bit. It's like the version of you that got you where you are today is not the version of you that's going to take you through the finish line. It's all about whether or not you're going to let that version be birthed. And I feel like when you ask me the question, it's like, why are people like, where do we get stopped? How do we get stuck? It's like, like I burned myself pretty bad. I don't know if you can see it. Like there was like this hole in my thumb. It's like such a
Okay.
good analogy. And so it's like new skin, right? And the new skin is like it's vulnerable and it's a little bit like, so when we're birthing this new version of ourselves, it's almost like a deer just being birthed and is weak on their
Yeah.
legs. It feels wobbly. It
Yes.
feels vulnerable. It feels unfamiliar. And we don't like that. So we retract back to the old version of ourselves because we know how that one goes. But this new version has the answers. It's
Yeah.
just you trust that new version of you knows what they're doing? Can you give it a little time and space for her or him to find the footing? Because she or he will. It's just
Right.
going to take a minute. And can you just be wobbly for a little bit? Take one
Right.
step and then one step and then one step and then a whole new life. But we get scared of that vulnerability
Yes.
because it doesn't have the same defenses and we're not so like, armored up that we run from it. And that's the piece I feel like we really need to start talking about more, because if more people understood that that is just how it is for all of us and you don't have to do it alone, have someone hold your hand, you'll get what you want.
Right. No, I love it. I love it. The wobbly deer example, little Bambi coming, I get you loud and clear, and it makes so much sense. We oftentimes we want to put pressure on ourselves for not mastering something out the gate, right? And who does that? Not that it's impossible, but that's just not the reality and norm for most people.
Yeah,
And it's not a bad thing.
and it's not a bad thing. And it's like what she said is like that new Bambi is reprogrammed in a completely different way. That new Bambi has all the wisdom, like you said, and all the learnings. She just needs, or he just needs a couple of minutes to get it together, like just a minute. Just like 20 seconds of courage, and not liquid courage, real courage.
And I'm glad you talked about courage, because oftentimes that's the missing ingredient, right? Sometimes
Yes.
we know what needs to be done, we can visualize it, we can see it.
Yeah.
We're just like, there's
Yeah.
still that, and we don't
Yeah.
take that step.
The leap of faith.
Yeah.
And this is where that saying, it's interesting we have these conversations, because like life just gets deeper when we have these types of conversations. It's like that's where you stand on the shoulders of giants until you can fly, and that's actually what a mentor is for. It's like you have somebody who's gone through it, understands it, sees the vision, sees the path, can get you there. Why not hold someone's hand through it? And why not have it be fun? I mean, like it's a soulmate connection, actually, in my opinion, and it could be just like the greatest ride of your life.
Well, the funny thing is, if you really think about it, all the hard work has been done. Like and you think it's not like we're living in caves, right? Like, I mean, you think about that, battling dinosaurs or hunting for our existence, and all that kind of stuff. That's not what our life is. So all the hard work has been done. So when you talk about standing on the shoulders of giants, I absolutely agree with you. It's just a matter of sort of recognizing. And that's why I very much believe in when you take action, you look to take action whenever you can, because you actually create some momentum in your life, right? And
exactly.
And so if you take that first step, regardless if you pass or you fail, right? You take that first step anyways, because really, the only two options are pass or fail, right? So let's talk about that. You pass, you're successful, great. But if you fail, there's a lesson you learn. That's going to help you for the next time, right? So it's just a matter of understanding that things happen to us in the various moments. Is what we do with them when those situations arise.
Yeah, interpretation is everything. And I love how you said that. Like, I have reframed failure from a long time ago. I went bankrupt and I was like 27 years old or something like that. It was probably my first big failure of that type.
Right.
And I learned to recontextualize it to, it's not failure. It's like, it's not a fit. Like, it's either like, it could just not be a fit, or like you said, you can learn some things, and it's an opportunity to see where you need to ask for help and gain support and learn some new things. And so if we can just look at it as a developmental opportunity rather than a failure, I think that just shifts the game for everyone. I mean, like every time an athlete doesn't get their goal or score, like, is that failure for them?
Right.
I mean, because they're the best failures out there.
I remember a basketball guy, and it was a basketball player who his team had just lost in the playoffs.
Mm.
And a reporter asked a particular player, was this a failure? Was this whole season a failure? And he's like, absolutely not. Like,
Yeah.
we had so much success collectively as a team. We achieved so much. We did so much. And yeah, sure, the ultimate goal wasn't realized, but it's not like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Like, you still
Right.
take from what we did. There was lots of positives that you can now build on to help you get one step closer to that ultimate goal.
Yeah, it's a journey. And there again, it's like another thing that gets said. It's about the journey and the process, not the end destination. And then what if they did win that? So then what? Like, what does
Right,
next year look like? Right.
right,
Like, so
right.
yeah, no, it's important. And it's important to celebrate all the successes along the way, because like that energy also creates a spark in the universe. It's like momentum, like you were saying. And I loved what you were saying about creating momentum, because when you have courage to take a step to create momentum, that's like a completely different energy also, and the universe responds to all that,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
get rewarded for that.
Yes.
I believe courage is rewarded. I really
Yep.
believe that.
Yep. Yep. I look at my personal life, and every time I've taken a step forward into something, whether I had the answer or not, something positive came out of it, right?
Right.
Even if I in that moment failed, in that moment didn't get what I was after, in that moment I didn't have that success, I still took a step forward. I remember hearing a story about a young man was just looking for he was job hunting. He was looking for work, and he probably went to like a dozen interviews, and they were all successful. And he went every single interview. He went and got feedback. Right, tell me where I could have done better, and he collect that feedback,
Mm.
and every time he used that to get better and to get better. And he had an information. He set up an information interview with this director of this organization, and they didn't have anything to offer him, but the director said, "Hey, I'll sit down and chat with you." And so when he told him, yeah, I've had a dozen interviews, the director said, I don't know if I could have done that.
Right.
I don't
Said that
know
he
if
had a
I
business.
don't know if I could have been gone through 12 interviews and been rejected that many times
Oh,
and keep going with that same level of energy and enthusiasm that you have. And I think that says a lot about our ability, why it's so important that we continue to push forward, right? Because
yeah.
you again, you create momentum for sure, for sure. But you're also building your character, you're building your strength, you're building your fortitude, where it's almost like you hear a no and you're like, yeah, whatever, I'm good. Like it doesn't phase you, it doesn't slow you down. So that's why we need to develop our courage to move forward, because we're only going to fortify ourselves in the long run.
Well, yeah, I also think what's being said when you say that, like the other thing that I'm hearing is I lost my train of thought, sorry. Someone out in the hallway and they distracted. I could hear them, they distracted me.
Mhm.
Oh, well, it's about not being attached to the results.
Ah,
So that's like
good
circumstantial
one.
power. Like, I'm only strong, I'm only happy, I'm only powerful, I only produce when the result is there. Okay, well, that means you have attached your worthy. There it is. You attach your worthiness to the result. And that's not what it's about. It's you are born worthy, that you are worthy. You have everything that, all of that should be independent of the result. And the people that know that and live that way and express themselves that way, I feel, are the ones that become the most successful, because they haven't let all of those know. It's like, how many of the Arnold Schwarzeneggers and Sylvester Stallones, like all of them, right? Michael Jordan, like all of them, right? Like they all of it, right? So it's about, and I think that that's a piece a lot of human beings don't get trained or taught in. I use that word train and develop a lot because I was in training and development in the corporate world. So it's just the way I use the language. But
Mhm.
it's like we don't get taught that who we are as humans is independent of our results, and we are worthy as love and affection, and our self-esteem or self-respect or self-confidence should not be depleted, and we can sit at the table of anyone who has any results just because of who we are, and we're a
Exactly.
contribution based on us, not based on the results we produce. It
Right,
took me a
right.
while to get that for myself, to be honest.
And that's okay. And that the best part about that is that's completely fine. Like
Yeah.
however long it takes us to get on this path, that's how long it takes us. And
Yeah.
that's when we're supposed to do it. And we're here now, right? That's what
Right.
matters. And so really much appreciate hearing that. Sophie, this has been such a great chat. I thank you for taking the time and hanging out like this. This has just been phenomenal, phenomenal. I love the work that you're doing now to help women specifically get to that better place, and using your own experiences and overcoming the challenges that you just glossed over really quickly, which I thought was impressive. But thank you for doing that. For listeners that wanted to connect with you or learn more about your work, where can we send them?
There's two places. My email, S as in Sam, D as in David, at sophietalks.com. That's SOPHIETALKS.com. SD@sophietalks.com. And then my Instagram's probably the best. It's at the Sophie Deslauriers. So THESOPHIEDESLAURIERS.
Awesome. Well, I will.
Thank you.
We will be sure to make sure that we include that information in our show notes for our listeners. Thank you again for being here. It was such a pleasure chatting with you, and congratulations on all that you've done, and all the best, Sophie.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure for me too. Have a good day.
Back we are here on the podcast. So much thanks and appreciation goes out to Sophie for being here. I really, again, thank you so much for sharing. From the conversation with Sophie, we learned the importance of reframing failure as a learning opportunity, and not being unattached to the results. Just like in the game of chess, each move, whether successful or not, teaches us valuable lessons and contributes to our growth and development. It's through the process of courageously taking steps forward, despite obstacles and setbacks, that we evolve into our best and most audacious selves. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Audacious Living Podcast. Remember, life is a journey of audacity and growth. And with each audacious decision that you make, you step closer to living the life of your dreams. Stay courageous, keep pushing forward, and never underestimate the power of your resilience. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.